There's a very old story about something that happened during the Persian Wars on the Greek frontier, an event that inscribed itself into the soul of a generation and terrified a transgressing army. It starts this way. In 480 BC, King Xerxes I of Persia assembled an army. That's misleading. 10 years before, Xerxes' dad, Darius, the Darius from the book of Daniel, assembled an army in the conventional sense. He mustered 25,000 or so soldiers and sent them to Greece. There the Persian army suffered one of those catastrophic upsets for which history is famous, and its survivors fled. Now, great kings hate losing, so it's not surprising that Darius pledged himself to Greek annihilation. Even before that upset, Darius had commanded a servant to say, "Master, remember the Athenians," before each meal. That's a solid way to cultivate bitterness, but alas for Darius, he died before he got around to it. Afterward, his son, Xerxes I, took up the cause, and when that man prepared to smite the Greeks, he didn't assemble an army in the conventional sense. He turned the entire empire into a gun pointed at the Aegean. Xerxes built new roads, he reinvented the navy, he dug canals between two seas to make the invasion easier. Then he summoned 500,000 soldiers and launched the greatest fleet the world had ever seen. There were troop carriers, barges, frigates, swift corvettes, and bristling warships. When that army arrived in Greece, the end had come. It landed, smashed a puny division of Greeks at Thermopylae, and marched on Athens. The old historians tell us that, at that point, the Greeks were in disarray. Some wanted to flee, others wanted to fight, still others wanted to throw in with Persia. Small wonder. While the Greeks were arguing, the Persians were burning the countryside and leveling Athens. Eventually, some of the Greeks fell back to their ships. They might have planned to flee, but if that's so, they never got the chance. A Greek named Themistocles told the Persians where they were. And that's when it happened. The Persian fleet bore down. It must have been a sight. 1,000 ships manned by one of the greatest seafaring civilizations of all time. Their oars clawed the waves, their prows loomed like dragons, in 100 languages their captains called orders. They entered the Straits of Salamis. Beyond it, they beheld open sea. The Persians came on, ready to smash the unsuspecting Greeks, when, all of a sudden, two things occurred. First, the Greeks appeared, not in disarray, but in battle formations. There were men at the oars and high-crested warriors straining from the bows. Second, there came the battle cry. The Greek playwright Aeschylus was a veteran of the Persian Wars, and he recorded the event this way. "And now, distant we heard," he wrote, "from every port this voice of exhortation, 'Now, sons of Greece, now!'" The whole Greek fighting force roared together what would become a famous rallying cry. What was it? It was this: "Free wives, free children, fight for everything you have!" They smashed into the Persian fleet, clogged the straits, and fought a land battle at sea. They won, by the way. I think that something like that is happening now. I don't mean in a political sense. I mean something like that is happening in the world and to the church. The pressures of our age are enormous. I read and write about history, among other things, for a living, and I can tell you, though our moment is not unprecedented, it is unique. Fortunately for us, the one enthroned in heaven laughs. Psalm 2:4. Jesus provides for his people. He always has and he always will. Throughout its long history, the church has received prophetic warnings. It has seen trends emerge as a last-minute solution to catastrophic ages. It has seen renewals spring forth like lightning from a clear sky, and gnarled remnants cling to the gospel far past the point of merely human endurance. All of that's going on right now. But what I want to talk about are three trends that are discernible in Western Christianity. They are: 1, a re-enchantment and re-spiritualization of Christianity. 2, a renewal in terms of discipleship, especially body-based discipleship, grounded in the spiritual practices. And 3, a new interest in the history of the church, patristic theology, and even, dare I say, ecumenical dialogue. In the next few posts, I'm going to pause our series on Kings to talk about these movements in depth, because these 3 are complex and trends do not from nowhere appear. In fact, the movements here have been growing for decades at least, not years. Note, if you are a part of the Roman Catholic Church, you'll recognize the Ressourcement and Aggiornamento, Vatican II in number 3. Our Eastern Orthodox brothers and sisters will be particularly familiar with number 1. There are simply too many voices and too many streams to pick a representative example of number 2, but I do think the Protestant Church has something special to offer here. Your job is to consider the evidence in the following posts. If the movements I'll identify in these essays really are a work of the Spirit, your job is to lean in. Honestly, if Aslan is on the move, your participation is not optional. Not if you want to thrive. Here's why. In another post, I said that I keep a list of events called normal strange things. They are events that you would not necessarily expect to recur in history, but do. One of those is timely warnings. Do you know how often, before disastrous events occur in world history, the people involved are warned? Almost always. I am particularly intrigued by the military examples. When Julius Caesar began his campaign in France, a brilliant leader named Vercingetorix knew exactly what would happen. He knew how to overcome Caesar, the Fabian strategy in their case, burn and retreat. His allies would not listen, and so 1 million Celts died and they lost the war. Another one. Have you ever heard of Alexander the Great? Before he invaded Persia, a Greek defector named Memnon warned the Persians about him. It's painful to read, but Memnon knew exactly what Alexander would and could do. He told the Persians how to prepare. They didn't listen, and their empire burned. It happens over and over again. The warning comes, and people do not listen. Well, the next few posts are a warning. If God is doing something in His church, in our time, it's not because no one will need it. God didn't get a hold of St. Benedict because the next few hundred years were going to be a gravy train. He didn't speak to St. Patrick because the feudal kings of Ireland were headed in a great direction. You see what I'm saying? If God is providing for His church in real time, you will absolutely need what He is providing. And get this, there will be joy in receiving it. Life submitted to Jesus is life as it was meant to be lived. If you're experiencing a divinely orchestrated dissatisfaction, it may be because God is calling you deeper. It may be that the 3 movements above will help you find your way. So let that desire be the motivator. I have a translation of this blessing from Isaac of Stella on my website, but it's worth copy-pasting here. I can't think of a better blessing for all in Christ in all times. May the Son of God, who is already formed in you, grow strong and immense in you, and become for you great gladness and exultation and perfect joy.